Stories-Cops of Reddit. What are some of the worst ways people have tried to get out of getting a ticket from you? Story 1. Someone I knew was trying to get out of drinking and driving. She went up to the cop and was like, "Listen, we're all white here." Needless to say, she went to jail. Story 2. Coworker of mine was speeding one day on a southbound highway. Told the cop, "Hey man, I know you got to give me a ticket, but please write out for northbound or else my wife will think I'm cheating on her." The cop laughed and told him to slow down and let him off. He was not married, nor was he even seeing anybody. Story 3. Pulled over an unregistered vehicle. They tried to offer me money. Behind me was a very large group of students watching on. All of them had access to my microphone to hear what was going on. I tried to explain this to the driver. He simply wouldn't listen or didn't understand. Not that it would have made a difference, but I would have preferred to avoid having to arrest him for a stupid mistake. He ended up getting arrested for a range of charges. Edit. The student were police academy student from NSW, Australia. We had lots that fortnight because reasons. They could hear the radio mic on my chest to see how I dealt with certain situations. This was done at a roadside random breath test stop, hence why they were all standing around in the background. Story 4. Not a cop, but I've seen many of my ex's ways on avoiding tickets, and she has avoided many tickets. Her best escape was by faking being mute, and fortunately, she knows sign language. Most cops would feel bad ticketing her, so they just let her go. While I feel bad for those cops. Story 5. Flirting is always bad, but is especially bad when the driver is really old, really young, or has their family in the car with them. I don't consider myself to be super attractive, but people will do anything to get out of a ticket. Threatening the officer is also pretty bad. That's happened before. Sometimes it is threatening to kill my family if I write them a ticket, but sometimes people get a little more creative. Some racist people assume that I am an illegal immigrant and threaten to report me if I write them a ticket. That one always makes me laugh. Bribing is always interesting. Some of the things people come up with are actually kind of funny. Story 6. One lady yelled and cursed at me while saying I was wasting my time dealing with her when I should be getting the real bad and dangerous drivers out there. She was stopped for going 17 miles per hour over in an active school zone. Edit. Normal speed limit 45 miles per hour. Active school zone 25 miles per hour. She was going 42 miles per hour. This particular school zone is only active for 2 hours at a time. Twice a day, she was weaving through the 3 lanes of 25 miles per hour traffic. Kind of hard to explain that she didn't know. Story 7. As a driver, had cop pull me over. I was 17 roughly, driving my mom's new car at almost 30 over in a residential area. Cop walks up, asks if it's a new car. Yup. Bet you can't even hear the engine when it gets going. Yup. Steering is probably pretty good. Right, yup, etc. for several more questions. Then just walks back to his car and drives off. His point was well established, but it was weird as to me at the time. I literally never offered one excuse. He did, and I just sat there answering yup. Story 8. I once got caught speeding and told the cop how embarrassing it was, but I really had to go too, which was true. He took my info and said with a little smile, "You can go. You'll receive the ticket by mail." It has been 6 months now, and still nothing. Did he gracefully change his mind? Edit. I just went to the police station, and they told me to call the city. I called the city, and they told me that there's nothing on my record, but to still make sure with the provincial cops since it was on the highway bridge, and that they had up to a year to send me that ticket. The office is closed today, so we shall wait and see, brethren. Edit 2. I received a post office notice yesterday, and went to get the letter just 10 minutes ago. It's the ticket. I wonder if it's because I called. Story 9. Relevance. My friend had a theory that if you could make a cop laugh, you can get out of a ticket. ID watched him do this on 3 occasions. Once, he was actually going 40 miles over the posted limit of felony, and he told the cop that he was trying to get tampons to his girlfriend who was cheering at our high school football away game. That was the actual truth. She clocked him going 95 in, let him off with a warning after some easy chat and a few laughs. The best, though, was when he got pulled over for having a busted turn signal. He handed the cop his license and asked, "Do you think I look better now or when I took that picture?" The cop looked up and hesitated like he actually thought about it. We all laughed, and the cop went back to his car. He walked back with his hand on his gun and said, "Do you realize there's a warrant out for your arrest?" Stunned silence. Step out of the vehicle. He unbuttons his holster. "And just with you, man. You with me. And gonna with you." My friend claimed he wasn't scared, but that's complete bullshit. We all laughed. Cop let us go with a warning. Edit. I don't know if it's a Gabriel Iglesias joke. I only ever saw his first special on Comedy Central and haven't watched his other shows. Even if it is, my friend pulled it off in really good context. You can hate on that if you want. I thought I'd just share a funny story. And this was in CO about 10 years ago. Cop said 40 over was felony speeding. And she had some chart on a clipboard that showed us how each 5 mph over the speed limit carried its own consequences. I'm not a lawyer and don't know, I was just in high school at the time. She said it was a felony, so we believed her, not a cop, but a friend was once stopped for a broken headlight. In my country, there's a fine for that. He didn't know what to do, so he got out of his car, no paranoid police here, and told the officer that the light does that sometimes and kicked it. It actually worked, the light turned back on, and he was off his way. Story 10, not a cop, but I've been pulled over 5 times and have never had a ticket. I also have several family friends who are officers. 2 best pieces of advice I have. 1. Be as perfectly respectful and polite as you can, please, thank you. Yes, sir, mom. No, sir, mom. 2. If it is nighttime, turn on all your interior lights before the officer even gets to your window. It is a lot less scary approaching a car that you can see inside of. Story 11, not a cop, but someone I know got pulled over doing about 80 in a 50, and when the officer approached his window and asked, "Why were you driving so fast?" this person's response was, "Sorry, officer, I was trying to get my flux capacitor up to speed." The cop didn't find it very funny. Story 12, as a patrol officer. You pull cars over multiple times a day. After almost 10 years in law enforcement, I've pulled over many. I've heard them all. Best that would have to be the guy I pulled over for speeding. I made my approach. Guy rolls down window. I said my speech. He looked me right in the eye and softly says I was speeding. "I'm sorry. But, you see, in the military, just an hour ago I got back from my tour to Iraq. My girlfriend here just picked me up from the airport. And to be honest, I was rushing home to my 2-minute welcome home bang session. Looking in the back seat, I seen military-style duffel bags, miscellaneous military uniforms, a folded-up welcome home banner, and his girlfriend in passenger seat. Gave me this, yeah. That's the truth. Look, have fun, I said, and handed him back his license. Worst, oh man, there's so many I have to take his use more often than one might think. The ones I always enjoy are, well, I know officer so, and so very well. He'll get me out of this. That's guaranteed to get you a ticket. Following closely is the do you not have anything better to do than harass the public? Nope, not today. Not this exact moment. You're the lucky winner. Press hard. Story 13, I have been waiting for this day. The year is 2007, and I was given an automatic electric defibrillator, or AED, and a bunch of us in my department had gotten them as well. Some wonderful local business donated them. I went through class, and I had this thing in my car, and I was ready to save some mother lives, yo. I don't know why I was so excited about it in retrospect. But I mean, new stuff is always fun. So about 2 months go by, and I am carrying this thing in and out of the car every day and doing battery checks and being a good police officer, and I'm kind of getting tired of looking at it. A guy working my area announces he is trying to stop someone doing 98 in a 45, and by some act of will, a few minutes later, the person pulls over. I start heading to the location of the stop to make sure it was not something very serious. And I get there, get out of my car, and this 20-something-year-old is explaining that his father is having a heart attack. I took the dude's ID out of my coworker's hand, asked, "Is this the address your father is at?" And the kid goes, "Yeah." And I ran like action movie style to my squad car, put that in gear, and everything went a plaid, ludicrous speed. Like, I radioed and told dispatch to send an ambulance as well. I get to the address, which is actually in a very affluent part of town, and the driveway has a gate on it. No time to hit a button. I throw this suitcase AED over the gate and climb that mother after it. And then I pick that up, and I truck my fat and my polyester uniform up the longest driveway in America, where I bang the out of the front door screaming police. I am here to help, this 60-year-old guy answers the door gingerly, while holding a tumbler full of what I guess was some kind of booze that I cannot afford. And I explain that I was told that someone was having a heart attack, and I'm out of breath pointing at this AED, and the guy looks at me like I am some kind of an alien. I bust out the ID that I took from a kid and show it to him. The guy goes, "That's my son." I explained that his son was pulled over doing 100 in a 45 and told the police that he was trying to get home because his father was having a heart attack. The dad just stared at me, blinking, not knowing what to say. I took the ID from him, got on my radio, and told a coworker that the father was having a nice night and there was not a medical emergency. Edit, I also canceled the ambulance. I then stood in the darkness by the gate hoping that someone would at least have the decency to open it. But after a few minutes, I threw the AED back over the gate and climbed that, then got back into my squad car. I drove back to the traffic stop where the son was getting a lot of tickets, and I gave the ID back to my coworker and figured that was the end. A few months later, I get a phone call for the coworker who wrote all the tickets, and I get informed that the son had a lawyer or team of lawyers and was fighting the ticket. I was asked to come to the bench trial by the prosecutor, which I did. Now in some areas of the country there are rooms for cops to go sit in and wait, but where I live and work, you sit in the courtroom. So there's this pile of people, this pile of cops from different cities, and the judge and people in the courtroom. Just take it as it comes. I, by some act of God, was sitting about 10 feet away from son, dad, without the tumbler, and a well-dressed young man that was explaining to them both that if the officers show up, the best course of action would be to plead guilty. The lawyer type asked son and dad if they recognized the officers in the room, and they both stared right at me and my coworker and told him no. They seemed excited. I went out to my car, got the stupid AED, and came back into the courtroom and sat there with it. Same spot, next to the coworker, and I caught the dad's gaze when he looked back. He nudged his son, who looked at me, holding the AED, and it was like I saw his soul escape his body. They plead guilty. I left and went and got lunch. Story 14. My dad once pulled over a woman who claimed she had diarrhea, and that's why she was driving so fast. He's an understanding guy, so naturally he let her drive home, but followed her and wrote the ticket there. Story 15. My dad was pulled over going way too fast on the interstate late at night, like 1 to 2 a.m. He's an anesthesiologist and got called into work because someone had been shot. It turned out that the person who had been shot was a cop, and so not only did my dad not receive a ticket, he got a police to the hospital, and he has refused to tell me exactly how fast they went. Hearing that story as a kid made me think my very by-the-book awkward dad was super cool. Story 16. Former highway patrol officer. More than anything, I've had people say they're in a hurry to get to the bathroom. On more than one occasion, they've even gone as far as to themselves in hopes to avoid a ticket. Story 17. I love the video of the woman talking to an officer that pulled her over for failure to stop. I thought you didn't give pretty girls tickets. Pardon me, I thought you didn't give pretty girls tickets. You didn't think we gave pretty girls tickets. You're absolutely right. We don't sign here. Story 18. Only a cadet, but I do go on ride-alongs. Someone tried to get out of ticket by using religion. They had said that they were a great Christian and didn't deserve a ticket, called us evil. Got a ticket. Story 19. Get dispatched to an accident and find a Corolla flipped onto its roof. Driver was sitting on the curb with very minor injuries, and no one else was hurt in the collision. I ended up arresting driver for DUI. She was 19, and this was her third DUI. Her response: why are we wasting each other's time? Just let me go. It's not like I killed anyone. Unfortunately, with the way the courts work in L.A. County, she was probably going to get off without any consequences. Story 20. LOL. I'm not a cop, and I don't drink alcohol, but I couldn't resist saying this once when I was pulled over. The officer approached my car. I gave him my license, registration, and insurance. Then he asked me, "Are you drinking tonight?" And I answered, "Are you buying?" I wish I could say that was an original, but I actually heard that from a friend of mine who is a retired highway patrolman. Story 21. Working for a small town where everyone knows everyone. I see a car blow a stop sign at a high rate of speed without tapping their brakes or slowing down. I pull the car over, and it's a woman that had served me lunch at our local diner earlier in the day. When I walk up, I see her starting to cry until she recognizes me. Then, magically, the tears were instantly gone. We make small chit-chat for a couple minutes, and she tells me, "Thank God it's you who pulled me over, or else I know I'd be getting a ticket." I laugh and ask for her ID, just for formalities. I wasn't planning on giving her a citation until I saw her past record. In the previous 3 months, she had been pulled over 7 times and given 5 citations. Everything from speeding, mostly for over 25 miles per hour, the posted limit, and running stop signs. Seeing this, I know she hasn't learned her lesson about safe driving and needs another reminder, so I write her. I go back to her car, and she starts screaming at me, saying, "I thought you were one of the cool cops." I tell her to have a nice night, and to take a moment to calm down before she drives off. She tells me, "Screw you," and rolls up her window. Just because I know you doesn't mean I'm automatically going to let you go. And if I do write you, it doesn't mean I'm not a cool cop. Story 22. There was a middle-aged guy who bought a brand new Mercedes convertible SLK. He took off down the road, flooring it up to 80 miles per hour and enjoying the wind blowing through what little hair he had left on his head. This is great, he thought, and floored it some more. He looked in his rearview mirror, and there was a Florida Highway Patrol trooper behind him, blue lights flashing and siren blasting. I can get away from him with no problem, thought the man, and he floored it some more and flew down the road at over 100 miles per hour. Then he thought, "What am I doing? I'm too old for this kind of thing," and pulled over to the side of the road and waited for the state trooper to catch up with him. The trooper pulled in behind the Mercedes and walked up to the man. "Sir," he said, looking at his watch, "my shift ends in 30 minutes, and today is Friday, the 13th. If you can give me a reason why you were speeding that I've never heard before, they'll let you go." The man looked back at the trooper and said, "Last week my wife ran off with a state trooper, and I thought you were bringing her back." The state trooper said, "Have a nice day." Story 23. Obligatory. Not a cop, but my father once got out of a ticket by pretending to be a Catholic priest. He is not Catholic, but uses some of the same liturgical dress and is easily mistaken for a priest when wearing a clerical shirt and collar. When he was pulled over for speeding, he made sure the cop saw his collar and his cane. The cop didn't want to give a ticket to a sick priest and just let him go on without a warning. My father replied with, "Bless you, my son," and went on his merry way. TLDR, my dad impersonates Catholic priests. Story 24. Long ago, approximate 30 years ago, my family were visiting America. We had hired a car and were zipping all over the place. We did Disney, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, and all that jazz. I can remember being pulled over by a cop, but I can't remember where. I do remember it was around the time we passed by XYZYX, or however you spell it. We stopped and took a photo of the sign. While scooting along a highway, we were originally going the speed limit. As you can imagine, every other man and his dog were ripping past us. I think the final straw for my dad was when we kept getting overtaken by trucks, so had added a few mph onto the speed. All good until we came over a bridge. Cop car on the other side. Lights went on. Dad pulled over. However, the cop car didn't move. Odd. About a minute or so later, the cop got out of the car, had the real Smokey Bear hat. Dad wound down the window. Cop in really heavy Texan drawl, "Can I help you, sir?" Dad Aussie accent, "Saw you flash your lights and thought you wanted me to pull over." Cop starts laughing. OHHH. "No, sir, I just flashed my lights so you'd see me and not hit me." Edit a few comments largely about accent and the like to help summarize. This is a memory from someone that was 8 at the time. I turned 8 during the holiday. My 8th birthday was at the hotel near Disneyland. I got a pullback race car, which I promptly lost, and also a huge lollipop that had a picture of Donald Duck on it. We went to Las Vegas, which apparently is near said ZYZYX turn off. I won a money box shaped like a crocodile alligator in Las Vegas, and then promptly lost it. We were staying in Circus. If you found a crocodile alligator money box in Circus near a racing car arcade machine around 86, then it is mine. I can't distinguish many U.S. accents, much like I can't tell you whether an English accent is Liverpudlian or Novocastrian, yet I can tell Riverina from Sapphire Coast, East Coast Australia. We'll see if I can get a picture of my alligator money box. I have a picture of my proudly holding it. That much I definitely know. I won it at Circus by playing this game where you had to shoot water pistols at a target, which made a hot air balloon rise. My dad and I competed. He now, in hindsight, intentionally missed. I won the money box. Story 25, also not a cop, but my best friend got out of a ticket for accidentally flashing at the officer. She had just gotten a tattoo that went around the outside of her breast and couldn't wear a bra while it was healing. She was pulled over for speeding, and while nervously trying to get her ID, insurance, and registration, her fell out of her tank top. The police officer kept trying to get her attention, and she got frustrated and sort of yelled, "Yes, I know, license and registration. Give me a minute." And the officer responded with, "Miss, please, your shirt." She looked down, became beet red, and quickly tucked her back in and handed him her paperwork without trying to make any eye contact. The officer started laughing. BC, he realized she was incredibly embarrassed and not actually trying to flash him. So he told her just to slow it down and let her go. She's gotten out of a few other tickets pretty ingeniously, but that's my favorite story. Edit a word, sorry, didn't catch my autocorrect. Story 26, I'm not a cop, but my dad told me a story about his friend when he was younger. His friend was pulled over by a cop one day, and when the cop came up to his window, my dad's friend said, "Yes, I would like a cheeseburger and fries, please." Apparently the cop thought it was so funny that he let him go. Story 27, best cop moment. My best friend committed suicide after a problem with his girlfriend. No, I will not go into details. My brother, got a call from mom saying she saw the girlfriend and was having a panic attack and couldn't breathe. We go Mach 7 up and down this 18-mile road to get to her, and I'm driving like a lunatic with my hazards on, of course. Get pulled over 80 miles per hour in. Officer asks what's going on. We explain. He checks ID, insurance, etc., make sure I'm not impaired, and then says, "Follow me. You've got in, but do not go past me." Fucking greatest act of kindness to a stranger. Not a cop, but was in the back seat with a female friend of mine driving. She was only going like 10 kilometers above the speed limit on an empty street. Speeding is bad regardless, and was pulled over by a cop. She takes off her jacket, and she's wearing a white dress shirt underneath. Unbuttons the top 3 buttons, which shows some cleavage, and a male officer arrives. My friend is behaving nicely and respectfully, with a bit of a flirting and charming attitude. She drops some papers on the ground near the end, bends down to pick it up, exposing more cleavage, and then gets away with no ticket. And I'm just sitting there going, WTF. Story 28, this is not the car you're looking for. In an Obi-Wan Kenobi impression with the hand wave, the coolest thing, I witnessed a friend do that worked and got him out of a speeding ticket. The officer tried hard not to crack, then just bent over below the window line where we couldn't see him but could hear him laugh. He then raised himself and said, "You have a good day," then left. Story 29, my cousin recently passed away, but one of the funniest stories he ever told has to do with this. One day, him and his wife were speeding down the road to get to our house quickly for supper, doing about 40 kilometers over the speed limit. On the way here, he was pulled over by the cops before they passed the local corner store. So the cop gets him to roll down his window, and before the cop says anything, he frantically says, "I know, I was speeding, and you can follow us and give us a ticket later, but we were just heading to the corner store cause the wife is busting at the seams and really needs to take a right now." So the cop follows them to the corner store, all the while my cousin's wife is yelling at him for making her so embarrassed. So they get there and says to her, "Look, I know you don't have to, but we can't afford a ticket right now, so you got to just sit up and get in there." So she begrudgingly goes into the corner store and waits around a while. When she comes back out, The cop is gone, and her husband has this stupid grin on his face. She asked my cousin what happened, and he said, smiling all the while, that the cop let him off with a warning, edit 40 kilometers, not 40,000 miles. Story 30, am I being detained, officer? Yes, something along the lines of, well, he literally thought asking if he was being detained would get him out of the ticket like the YouTube videos had been watching. I guess you could say it worked, because instead of a ticket, he got a summons to court. Story 31, not a cop, but my buddy and me were driving an old, unregistered, uninsured beater once and got pulled over. Before the cop could ask anything, my friend rolls down the window and says, how long is this going to take? I'm afraid I'm going to run out of gas. The cop then says, turn off the engine. My friend replies, if I turn off the car, it won't start again without a jump and may not even start at all. Cop waved us off at that point. Story 32, I crested a hill going 85 and a 70, only to see an officer sitting on the side of the road in his Ford Explorer. I knew he had me, so I pulled over before he could even pull out and turn his lights on. When he came up to my window, he noticed a little helicopter sticker on the side of my car. Seeing the sticker, he asked me, they let you drive like that on Fort Rucker? It was a pretty good assumption since that's where Army flight school is, and I was about an hour away from the base. Of course, me being smart and not stationed there anymore replied, I don't know, sir, I'm stationed at Fort Benning. To which he fired back, they let you drive like that on Fort Benning? I gave him a chuckle and a no, sir. Let me go with a verbal warning. Overall, it was an 810 experience. Would do over. Story 33, this isn't 100 relatable to the question asked, but I want to share it before the law or SOP changed to having to be 18 for a police ride-along. I did one with my police officer dad when I was 11 for Take Your Daughter to Work Day. It was a day shift, and there wasn't much action going on. About midway through the shift, my dad parked on the side of the road and let me handle the radar gun. Out of nowhere, a car comes speeding down a nearby hill marked 30 miles per hour. I clocked the car at 90 miles per hour. My dad clicks on the lights and sirens and takes off after it. It doesn't slow down. Before I know it, we're doing 110 miles per hour on a CTH. We go for about 5 miles, and this car still won't stop or slow down. She hits a mailbox and makes a trash can fly. Dad calls for backup, and soon there are 2 squad cars going after this car. I'm freaking pumped. This is the most intense action I've ever experienced in my 11 years of life. Way better than being at school. The car finally pulls over. It doesn't take long to notice that the windows of the car are missing and are replaced with saran wrap, duct tape to the car. I should probably share that at this point in his life, my dad was about 325 pounds, 65, shaved head, and intimidating as. If I got in trouble, all this guy had to do was look at me with angry eyes, and I would immediately wish for a quick, swift death. Dad goes up to the car, lets me get out of the squad and stand by near the hood of said squad, and has the driver get out. It's a middle-aged woman who weighs maybe 125 and clocks in at around 52 height-wise. My dad brings his face down to hers, inches away, looks at her with eyes that could kill, and asks in an intimidating yet controlled manner, why were you going so fast? And why didn't you pull over when I had my sirens and lights going? The woman tells my dad that she didn't pull over because she didn't hear or see him behind her. My dad, with bladed hand inches from her face, if you were ever in Army basic training, you know exactly what kind of bladed hand gesture I'm talking about, asks. You're telling me that you didn't hear or see me when you have no God windows on your car. You have saran wrap on your windows. As soon as my dad finishes this question, the lady replies, sir, I just wet myself. My dad made her pee her pants just with a look and a question. I didn't get to stick around for the aftermath because my dad asked the responding officer to take me back to the station so he could continue with the arrest. When I got older, I asked my dad about the lady. Apparently, she blew a 34 on the breathalyzer at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yikes. Definitely the coolest Take Your Daughter to Work day ever. Story 34, my driver's ed teacher got pulled over for a broken taillight. Didn't get a ticket, but she had a bunch of fresh donuts in the front seat, and she politely offered the cop one, and he gave her a 100 ticket. Story 35, I once got pulled over for being in a passing lane of a 2-lane turn. I was trying to get over, but the cop had his spotlight on me and couldn't see to get over. He pulled me over stating the above. I explained I couldn't see, then said I had a brake light out. I had just gotten an inspection, so he must be mistaken. Then asked if I was at a party and drinking. I said no, I was a speaker at an event and have a 2-hour drive home. He was fishing to give me some kind of ticket. Ran my info and let me go. Story 36, not a cop, but I tried a pretty lame excuse when I was 18. I stumbled upon 3 cars going 75 and a 60, and I decided to hang with them for a while. We're all hightailing it in a pack when the guy behind me pulls into the slow lane, and there's a sheriff car behind me. Now he's riding me, and I'm in cruise control at 75 sweating bullets. The guy to my right drops back a bit, and I shift into the slow lane to watch the sheriff car blaze past me at around 90. I don't know what to think, so we all get back into position, and about 30 minutes later, a policeman does a U-turn and pulls us all over. My door panel is off on the driver's side, so I just tell this guy that I'm doing electrical work and my speedometer is part of it. So it isn't working right, and I'm trying to keep speed with everyone else. He didn't buy it, and I feel like an idiot. Story 37. I was once pulled over for a rolling stop through a stop sign at an otherwise empty intersection. The cop said to me something along the lines of, "You shouldn't be driving like that with your daughter in the car with you." I then let him know that she was actually my wife and not my daughter. He turned a shade of red, very similar to the lights on the roof of his car, told us to have a nice day, and went back to his car. Humor and/or embarrassment can usually get you out of a ticket as long as it's respectful. Story 38. I'm a female. We were on assignment in a high-crime area where we flagged any car over with anything wrong with it. Zero-tolerance checkpoint kind of thing. I flagged a girl over because of something inane, such as expired registration sticker. We did have the option of discretion, as in, we were looking for the actual criminal shitheads. So if it was a decent person, we did have the option of letting them off with a warning anyway. This girl told me she was on her way to a doc appointment for a pap smear. Everything else was in order, no rap sheet of robberies or anything, and she was polite and respectful. I totally let her off with a verbal warning. I figured she was on her way to have some metal clamps shoved up her. The last thing she needed was a ticket on top of that. Oh, mayo. Story 39. My physics teacher used to be a tutor at college, and he told us that kids would ask him to do the math and prove that they weren't going X fast by the time the cop pulled them over. The math always solidified the ticket. Story 40. A couple of weeks ago, I decided it would be cool to do some donuts in my car. I had never really done donuts before, so I was pretty excited. It was about 11 p.m., and I pulled out of a residential neighborhood. I proceed to do some donuts out on the street, and just as I'm finishing up, I see a cop come through the gigantic vapor clouds I had just created. I start to pull over just as he turns on his lights. He comes pretty quickly to the window, and I have my license and registration ready. He then asked me why I was doing what I was doing. I told him I have no excuse and that I'm stupid. He looks at me with a dumbfounded look and proceeds to lecture me and tell me he could easily impound my car and take me to jail. He then asks what I'm doing with my life, and I tell him in a respectful manner. He goes back to his car, and for a few minutes, and comes back and gives me my license and registration. He then tells me if he was CHP, I would already be in jail. He then tells me that he remembers being young and having a powerful car and proceeds to give me a warning. Let's just say I really appreciated the warning he gave me. Story 41. I was late for an interview. I pulled out in an area that has very bad view in both directions. We're talking hiding a semi-truck with a full trailer bed here, and there was a semi behind me after I pulled out. I start boosting it to try and avoid a rear into my car, and see that in the other direction, just as bad a vision, there was a construction group working on the side of the road. I ended up having to gas it super hard so that I could get in front of the car to my left, or I would end up plowing straight into the construction zone, or get rammed in the by a semi. Normally, this would have put me at 26 over, but they were lowering the speed limit, the reason for the construction, and the officer counted it as 36 over. I got out of it entirely by threatening a lawsuit, since there were no construction postings at the intersection to warn me. I went around and looked for more signs skipping my interview, and found none for about 5 miles either way from the construction zone. The state patrolman wasn't too happy about it, but the district attorney didn't want to fight a losing battle. I didn't get out of it with the cop, but with the D of the D. They actually liked me because, unlike the other junkies and such that showed up to meet before their cases, I actually dressed nicely, introduced myself politely, said yes sir, no sir, etc., and calmly explained my side of things as well as showing photos of the zone. In the end, he said it wasn't worth the trouble to put something stupid on a kid's record. I was like 17 at the time, just because of extenuating circumstances. That patrolman was a hard ass though, and gave me a go to you shitty look as I walked out.